The vote of extinction, the great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Thousands of alien delegates filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a sea of scales, fur, and exotic appendages. At the center, a holographic display showed a small blue planet spinning slowly in the void. Earth, Ambassador Zextar of the reptilian hegemony stood tall, his golden scales catching the light as he addressed the assembly. Fellow beings, his voice echoed through translators. We gather today to discuss the human problem. A wave of clicking, chirping, and growling rose from the crowd. The humans had been the newest species to join the galactic community just 50 years ago. In that short time, they had caused more chaos than any other race in recorded history. They are unpredictable, hissed Counselor Velana from the Crystalline Confederation. Their emotions make them dangerous. They fight wars over resources they could simply trade for. From the insectoid section, Queen Hive Mother Zark added her voice to the complaints. My scouts report humans sending their young into battle. What civilized species risks their children in warfare? The ethereal sage Morden floated forward, his translucent form shimmering. But consider their innovations. In 5 decades, they've advanced their technology by centuries. Their creativity is exactly the problem, Zextar interrupted. They create weapons of mass destruction as easily as they create art. They're a threat to galactic stability. The debate had raged for months. Some species saw humans as useful allies. Others viewed them as cosmic vermin that needed extermination. But today was different. Today was the vote. Supreme Chancellor Kretos, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council eons ago, raised his crystalline staff. The motion before us is clear. Do we remove humanity from the galaxy permanently? The silence was deafening. But Chancellor, spoke Ambassador Yex from the Peaceful Trade Union, surely there are alternatives to genocide. Containment, perhaps? Relocation? Tried and failed, Zextar replied coldly. Humans break every barrier we place. They're like a virus, spreading wherever they can survive. My military advisors suggest that within 200 years, they'll outnumber every other species combined. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The fear was real. Humans reproduced faster than most races. They adapted to environments that killed other species. They turned deserts into gardens and poisoned wastelands into thriving colonies. Queen Zack's compound eyes glittered. They also refused to follow proper social hierarchies. Human children question their elders. Human workers demand equal treatment. They spread these dangerous ideas wherever they go. The motion stands, Chancellor Kretos announced, all in favor of Resolution 4471, the complete removal of humanity from galactic territory. Thousands of appendages, tentacles, and limbs rose into the air. The count began. Ambassador Sarah Chen, Earth's sole representative, watched in horror from her designated platform. She had argued passionately for her species, but it seemed hopeless. The fear and hatred were too strong. Please, she whispered into her translator, though she knew it was over. We can change. We can be better. But her words were lost in the counting. The final tally appeared on screens throughout the chamber, 7,124 votes in favor, but 203 against. 445 abstentions. Humanity was condemned. Chancellor Kretos' voice boomed across the hall. Resolution 4471 passes. The Galactic Defense Fleet will implement the cleansing protocol within 30 standard days. Sarah Chen collapsed to her knees. In 1 month, every human world would burn. Earth, Mars, the colonies on Europa and Titan, the mining stations in the asteroid belt, the research outposts scattered across dozens of star systems. All of it would be destroyed. As the delegates began to file out, chattering with satisfaction, few noticed the small device that Ambassador Chen dropped as security escorted her away. It was a simple communicator, designed to look like a decorative brooch, but it had recorded everything. Halfway across the galaxy, Admiral Marcus Webb received the transmission aboard the human battleship Defiance. His weathered face hardened as he listened to the proceedings. All hands, he announced over the ship's communication system. This is the Admiral. As of today, humanity is officially at war with the galaxy. He paused, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so welcoming. Prepare for Ghost Protocol. We're going dark. Across human space, the message spread. Military fleets vanished from their bases. Colonial governors activated emergency procedures. Research stations went silent. Entire populations seemed to simply disappear. The Council had voted for humanity's extinction. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. In the deepest vaults of Earth's military command, Project Lazarus came online. Files marked classified species survival only began to decrypt. Technologies that humanity had developed but never used. Weapons they had built but hoped never to deploy. Strategies they had crafted for the darkest possible future. The galaxy wanted humans gone. They were about to learn why that was a terrible mistake as the great warships of the Galactic Defense Fleet prepared for their mission of extermination. Human ships slipped quietly into the void between stars. They carried with them not just weapons and supplies, but something far more dangerous. They carried human ingenuity, human stubbornness, and human rage. The Council thought they were ending a problem. They were about to discover they had created their worst nightmare. The human response. 3 weeks after the vote, Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Cosmic Justice, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on his screens. Around his flagship, the largest military fleet in galactic history spread out in perfect formation. Over 10,000 warships representing 47 different species. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we've sent the surrender demand on all frequencies." No response from the humans. Zextar's forked tongue flicked out in satisfaction. "Expected. Begin orbital bombardment of their military installations. We'll give them one more chance to evacuate their civilians before we sterilize the planet." The first wave of energy beams lanced down from space, targeting human military bases across Earth's surface. But instead of the expected explosions, the beams struck nothing. "Sir," the tactical officer's voice carried confusion. "The bases are empty. All of them. Impossible. Our intelligence shows 40 million humans on Earth. Where did they go?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began screaming throughout the fleet. "Admiral!" The sensor operator's voice cracked with panic. "We have incoming!" Hundreds of ships coming out of hyperspace directly above us. The main screen erupted with light as human vessels materialized seemingly from nowhere. But these weren't the sleek, elegant ships that other species built. These were brutal, angular things that looked more like flying fortresses than spacecraft, and they were already firing. The human attack was unlike anything the Council forces had ever seen. Instead of the orderly battle lines that civilized species used, human ships swarmed like angry insects. They came from every angle, using the fleet's own size against it. "How are they moving like that?" Zextar demanded as a human destroyer somehow slipped between two Council dreadnoughts and raked both with weapons fire. "Our ships are 10 times their size." His tactical officers studied the readings with growing alarm. "Sir, they're using some kind of gravity manipulation technology. They're literally falling towards their targets, using momentum as a weapon." On the screen, they watched in horror as a damaged human cruiser accelerated directly into the side of a crystalline Confederation battleship. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers. "They're ramming us!" someone shouted. "What kind of species uses suicide attacks as standard tactics?" Admiral Webb's voice crackled across all frequencies as his flagship, the Defiance, spun through the enemy formation like a dancer. "The kind that has nothing left to lose. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Fleet. You came to our home to murder our families. Did you really think we'd make it easy?" The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, over half the Council fleet was destroyed or crippled. The human losses were severe too, but they had achieved their goal. Earth was safe, but the real shock came when Zextar's sensors finally got a clear reading on human deployments across the galaxy. "This can't be right," he whispered, staring at the data. His aide checked the numbers twice. "Sir, we're reading human military signatures in over 300 systems." "How is that possible? They've only been in space for 70 years. What the Council didn't know was that humans had been secretly exploring the galaxy for decades longer than they'd admitted. While publicly they had presented themselves as a young, naive species just learning to travel between stars, privately they had been mapping trade routes, cataloging resources, and establishing hidden bases. The moment Ambassador Chen had dropped that recording device, Ghost Protocol had activated. Every human civilian, every research station, every colonial outpost had vanished into carefully prepared hiding places. Some went underground on distant worlds. Others disappeared into the vast space between star systems. A few simply changed their identities and blended in with other species, but the military hadn't hidden. They had spread out. Over the next few days, reports flooded into the council chambers. Human raiders had struck mining operations in the Vega system. A convoy of reptilian supply ships had vanished near the Horsehead Nebula. The Crystalline Confederation's most secure research facility had been infiltrated and its data stolen. Chancellor Kretos called an emergency session. How? He demanded of his military advisors. How did they know we were coming? How did they prepare so quickly? General Vashati of the Armored Corps pulled up strategic displays. Supreme Chancellor, our analysis suggests the humans have been planning for this scenario since they first made contact with us. Every trade mission, every diplomatic visit, every cultural exchange, they were gathering intelligence. But why? We welcome them into the galactic community. Ambassador Yex, who had voted against the resolution, spoke quietly from his seat. Because they're smart, Chancellor. They studied our history. They saw what happened to the last 3 species that the Council deemed problematic. They knew this day would come. The truth was devastating. Humans had learned from studying galactic history that the Council had eliminated entire species before. The Wanderers, who had refused to follow trade regulations. The Builders, whose megastructures had been deemed threats to navigation. The Singers, whose telepathic abilities had made other species uncomfortable. Each time, the Council had found reasons. Each time they had voted. Each time a species had vanished forever. Humans had simply decided not to be next. Sir, reported General Vashati, we're also receiving troubling intelligence from our allies. Several species are reconsidering their support for Resolution 4471. What? Why? The humans have been broadcasting recordings of our vote across the galaxy. They're asking other species a simple question. If the Council can vote to exterminate humanity for being dangerous and unpredictable, which species will be next? Chancellor Kretos felt a chill run through his ancient bones. Show me these broadcasts. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Webb's scarred face speaking directly into the camera. Citizens of the galaxy, his voice was calm, almost conversational. Your leaders have decided that an entire species, men, women, and children, should die because they fear our potential. They didn't try exile. They didn't try containment. They didn't try diplomacy. They chose genocide. The image shifted to show recordings from the council chamber, focusing on the delegates' faces as they voted for human extinction. Look at them, Webb continued. Look how easily they condemned billions of lives. How confident they were in their righteousness. Now ask yourself, what happens when they decide your species is too dangerous, too unpredictable, too different? The transmission ended with a simple message. Humanity remembers our friends and our enemies. Within days, 3 species formally withdrew from the military coalition. Within weeks, 12 more demanded an investigation into the Council's decision-making process, but the real blow came when the ethereal sage Morden requested a private audience with Chancellor Kretos. The humans have made us an offer. Morden said simply, what kind of offer? Protection. They say that any species that grants them sanctuary will receive human military support if the Council ever votes against them. Kretos slammed his crystalline staff against the floor. Blackmail. They're threatening the stability of the galaxy. Are they? Morden asked quietly. Or are they simply offering the same guarantee that the Council was supposed to provide? Protection from extinction. As reports continued to flood in of human raids, human infiltrations and human propaganda, one thing became clear to the Council leadership. They had started a war they weren't winning, and it was about to get much worse. The galaxy burned 6 months after the failed assault on Earth. The galaxy was in chaos. What had started as a simple extermination mission had become a nightmare that consumed entire star systems. Supreme Chancellor Kretos stood in his private chambers, looking out at the Council homeworld's 3 moons. One of them now bore a massive crater where a human strike team had somehow penetrated its defenses and destroyed a critical communications array. "How many today?" he asked his aide without turning around. 17 attacks across 9 systems, Supreme Chancellor. The humans hit a reptilian supply depot, 2 crystalline research stations, and the aide hesitated. "And? They've taken the prison planet Corvash Prime." Kretos spun around. "Taken it? That's impossible. Corvash Prime holds the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. The security there was impenetrable," his aide corrected. "The humans didn't attack from space. They somehow infiltrated the prisoner population and started a revolt from the inside. By the time our forces responded, the inmates had seized the weapons depot. The prisoners will kill each other. That planet is filled with the worst murderers and terrorists in the galaxy." "Actually, sir, that's the disturbing part. The humans have organized them. They're calling it the Freedom Fleet, and they're recruiting anyone with a grudge against the Council." Kretos felt another piece of his carefully ordered galaxy crumble away. "How many prisoners?" "Nearly 2 million, sir. And they're not just sitting there. Intelligence reports suggest they're using Corvash Prime as a base to hit Council facilities throughout the sector." The Chancellor activated his personal communicator and called for an emergency session. Within hours, the Great Hall was filled with angry, frightened delegates. Ambassador Zextar, his golden scales now dulled with stress, delivered the military briefing. "Fellow Council members, the situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. Human forces are operating in over 600 systems. They've destroyed 43 major installations, captured 12 strategic positions," and he paused, clearly struggling with the next part. "And they've convinced 18 species to formally leave the Council." The hall erupted in shocked voices. 18 species represented nearly a quarter of the Council's membership. Queen Hive Mother Zack's compound eyes glittered with rage. "Traitors! They're choosing humans over the civilization we've built together." "Perhaps," said Ambassador Yex quietly. "They're choosing survival over principles that led to genocide." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the chamber activated without authorization. Admiral Webb's face appeared, but he looked different now. Older, harder, with scars that hadn't been there during the first transmission. "Greetings, Council members." His voice carried a cold amusement. "I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I have a proposal." Security forces rushed to shut down the transmission, but somehow the humans had seized control of the entire communication system. "For the past 6 months, you've been trying to exterminate my species. In return, we've been teaching you what war actually means. I think it's time we discussed terms." Chancellor Kretos stepped forward. "We don't negotiate with terrorists." Webb laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Terrorists? You voted to murder every human being in the galaxy, including infants and children. What does that make you?" The Admiral's image was replaced by footage of human refugee camps, thousands of families living in hidden bases, children growing up in underground caverns, elderly humans dying far from their homes. "These are the dangerous predators you fear so much," Webb continued. "Tell me, Council members, when you see a human child playing with her dolls in a survival shelter, do you really feel threatened?" The images continued, human doctors treating wounded aliens, human engineers building shelters for displaced populations, human teachers conducting classes in refugee camps for multiple species. "But you know what actually threatens you?" Webb's face returned to the screen. "The fact that every species in the galaxy is now asking themselves, if the Council can vote to eliminate humans without trial, without appeal, without mercy, what's to stop them from voting to eliminate anyone?" More footage appeared, this time showing massive demonstrations on dozens of worlds. Signs in hundreds of languages demanded Council reform. Protesters called for the resignation of leadership. Some carried pictures of human families with the words, "Never again." You see, Chancellor Kretos, you didn't just declare war on humanity. You revealed what the Council really is. A tyranny that maintains order through the threat of extinction. And every species in the galaxy just watched you prove it. The transmission shifted to show intelligence footage from inside Council military installations. Human infiltrators working alongside alien allies, sabotaging equipment and stealing data. "You're wondering how we're everywhere at once," Webb said. "How we know your plans before you make them. How we strike targets you thought were impossible to reach. The answer is simple. We're not alone anymore." The final image was devastating. Representatives from over 50 species standing together in what appeared to be a secret assembly. Some were former council members. Others were species that had never joined the galactic government. All of them were united behind banners that showed both human and alien symbols. "The Resistance Alliance extends this offer one time," Webb concluded. "End Resolution 4471. Formally apologize for the attempted genocide. Submit to independent investigation of council practices, and begin real negotiations for governmental reform. And if we refuse?" Kritos demanded. Webb's expression didn't change. "Then we finish what you started. But I should warn you, humans are very good at finishing things." The transmission ended, leaving the hall in stunned silence. General Vashati was the first to speak. "Supreme Chancellor, our intelligence estimates that the Resistance Alliance has military assets equal to our remaining forces. If the war continues, we cannot surrender to inferior species," Zextar hissed. "The Council has maintained galactic order for 10,000 years. By eliminating anyone who disagreed," Ambassador Yex replied coldly. "The humans have shown everyone what lies beneath our civilization." Queen Zack's wings buzzed with agitation. "This is intolerable. We must increase military pressure. Show them the price of defying the Council." But even as she spoke, new reports were flooding in. 3 more Council worlds had declared independence. The Peaceful Trade Union had formally recognized the Resistance Alliance as a legitimate government. The Ethereal Confederation had withdrawn all their ships from Council service. Most devastating of all, the Galactic Bank had frozen all Council military accounts pending investigation of war crimes. Chancellor Kritos looked around the chamber at the fearful, angry faces of his fellow leaders. Many seats were now empty. Delegates recalled by governments that no longer supported the war. "How long?" he asked General Vashati quietly. "Supreme Chancellor, how long can we continue fighting?" The general consulted his tactical display. "With current resources and no new support, perhaps 6 months. Maybe less if more species withdraw." Kritos closed his eyes. The council that had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia was crumbling, and it was all because they had underestimated one small blue planet. "Sir," his aide whispered urgently, "we're receiving reports of massive human fleet movements. It looks like they're preparing for something big." On the tactical displays, hundreds of red dots were converging on key council positions. Whatever the humans were planning, it was going to dwarf everything that had come before. The galaxy burned around them, and Chancellor Kritos finally understood a terrible truth. Humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for justice, and they were winning. The tide turns. The attack came at dawn on the Council homeworld, but it wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of warships dropping from hyperspace with weapons blazing, a single human transport materialized in orbit. It broadcast on all frequencies, not demands for surrender, but an invitation. "Citizens of the galaxy," Admiral Webb's voice reached every communication device on the planet. "Today we offer truth. What emerged from the transport wasn't an invasion force, but something far more dangerous to the Council's authority. Journalists, historians, and witnesses from dozens of species. They had come to broadcast the trial of the century. In the Great Plaza outside the Council chambers, human engineers had somehow erected a massive transmission array overnight. Nobody could explain how they'd infiltrated the most secure planet in the galaxy, but there it stood, a gleaming stage that would carry signals to every world with a receiver. Supreme Chancellor Kritos watched from his office window as millions of citizens gathered in the streets. Many carried signs, but these weren't protests anymore. They were obituaries, pictures of species that had been removed by council vote over the centuries. "Sir," His aide reported nervously, "Ambassador Chen is requesting an audience." I thought she was dead. Apparently not, sir. She's in the main chamber with representatives. When Kratos entered the Great Hall, he stopped in shock. The chamber was packed, but not with council delegates. Beings he didn't recognize filled the seats, some wearing simple clothes that marked them as refugees, others in military uniforms of species he'd never seen before. At the center podium stood Ambassador Sarah Chen, but she looked different, stronger. Behind her stood a mixed group of humans and aliens, all wearing badges that identified them as members of the Resistance Alliance. "Supreme Chancellor," Chen said formally, "I present myself as prosecutor in the case of Galactic Justice versus the Council of Species, charged with genocide, conspiracy, and crimes against civilization." "This is absurd," Kratos sputtered. "You have no authority here. This chamber is Sovereign Council territory." "Was," corrected a voice from the crowd. Sage Morden floated forward, his ethereal form shimmering with what looked like sadness. "The Ethereal Confederation formally revokes recognition of council authority as of this morning. We cannot support a government that orders the extinction of entire species." "The Peaceful Trade Union concurs," added Ambassador Yex, "as do the Independent Worlds Alliance, the Outer Rim Coalition, and 43 other governments." Chen gestured to the massive screens that had been installed around the chamber. "This trial is being broadcast to over 10,000 worlds. Every species in the galaxy will see the evidence we present today." "Evidence of what?" Kratos demanded. "Of what the Council really is," Chen replied calmly. The screens came alive with documents, thousands of them, classified Council records spanning millennia, orders for population control, votes to remove problematic species, military authorizations for cleansing operations. "The Wanderers," Chen began, her voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy, "removed by Council Vote 2347 years ago for refusing to follow trade regulations. The official record states they were relocated to distant worlds." The screen showed the truth, military reports describing the systematic destruction of Wanderer colonies. "Not relocation, extermination. The Builders," she continued, "voted extinct 1,123 years ago for threatening navigation safety with their megastructures." More documents appeared. The Builders hadn't threatened anyone. They had simply created art that other species found incomprehensible. Their crime was being different. The Singers eliminated 892 years ago for telepathic contamination of other species. The final batch of files revealed the most horrifying truth of all. The Singers hadn't been mentally controlling anyone. They had been exposing council lies, sharing memories of atrocities that leaders wanted hidden. As each revelation appeared on screens across the galaxy, the chamber grew quieter. Even the most loyal council supporters were staring at evidence they had never seen before. 18 species, Chen said softly. 18 entire civilizations erased from existence. Billions of lives snuffed out by council vote, and the only record of their existence hidden in classified archives. Chancellor Kratos found his voice. You don't understand. The council maintains order. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good." "Whose greater good?" The question came from the gallery, spoken by a being Kratos didn't recognize. An elderly creature with silver scales and kind eyes. "Who are you to speak in this chamber?" The being stood slowly. "I am Keeper Vash of the Lost Archives, the last survivor of the Singer species." The chamber erupted. The Singers were supposed to be extinct. Every member of their species had been accounted for in the military reports. "I escaped," Vash continued, his voice carrying a strange musical quality. "I hid among other species for 9 centuries, waiting for the day when someone would be brave enough to challenge the Council's lies." He gestured to Chen. "The humans gave me that hope. They showed me that a species could fight back, could refuse to simply accept extinction. But more importantly," Vash's eyes began to glow with an inner light, "they showed me that the galaxy remembers." What happened next changed everything. Keeper Vash raised his hands, and every being in the chamber and watching on screens across the galaxy suddenly experienced something unprecedented. Memory. Pure, undiluted memory. They saw the Wanderer children playing in crystal cities before the bombs fell. They felt the joy of builder architects creating impossible sculptures in space. They heard the last songs of the singer choirs as council ships closed in. They experienced the terror, the confusion, the desperate hope that somehow their civilizations would survive. And they felt the moment when hope died. When the telepathic sharing ended, the galaxy wept. On thousands of worlds, beings of every species mourned for civilizations they had never known existed. In the council chamber, even the most hardened military officers were crying. "This is what you voted for," Chen said quietly, gesturing to the devastated faces around her. "This is what you chose when you condemned humanity. Not just our death, but our complete erasure from history." She turned to address the cameras directly. "But humans are stubborn. We don't erase easily. And now that you've tried to eliminate us, we're going to make sure this never happens again." The screens changed again, showing something that made the remaining council loyalists gasp in recognition. It was a document they all knew, the original council charter, written 10,000 years ago. "Funny thing about your founding documents," Chen said with a slight smile. "They actually forbid exactly what you've been doing. Article 12, Section 3. No species shall be condemned to extinction for cultural, biological, or behavioral differences deemed problematic by the majority." She highlighted the relevant text. "You've been violating your own laws for millennia, which means every vote, every elimination, every genocide, all of it was illegal under the government you swore to uphold." Admiral Webb's voice joined the broadcast from orbit. "The Resistance Alliance offers the galaxy a simple choice. Continue following leaders who have committed genocide for centuries, or join us in building something better." The response was immediate and overwhelming. On screen after screen, they watched as governments across the galaxy formally withdrew from council authority. Military commanders laid down their weapons. Entire fleets switched sides in real time. But the most powerful moment came when Ambassador Zextar, the architect of Resolution 4471, slowly removed his council insignia and let it fall to the floor. "I was wrong," he said simply. "We were all wrong." By the end of the day, the Galactic Council effectively no longer existed. Most member species had joined the Alliance while others declared independence. Only a handful of worlds remained loyal to the old order. Chancellor Kretos sat alone in his empty chamber, watching the last of his supporters file out. "It's over," his aide said quietly. "Yes," Kretos replied. "I suppose it is." Outside, humans and aliens worked together to dismantle the symbols of council authority. But they weren't destroying everything. They were building something new. Ambassador Chen stood with Admiral Webb on the steps of the former council building, watching the crowd celebrate in the streets. "Think it will work?" Webb asked. "A truly democratic galaxy?" Chen smiled, remembering the scared young woman who had watched her species condemned to death. "Humans are good at impossible things, and we're not doing it alone this time." Above them, the stars shined on a galaxy transformed. Where once there had been tyranny, now there was hope. The Council had wanted a galaxy without humanity. Instead, they got a galaxy where humanity ensured no species would ever face extinction alone again. A new dawn 5 years after the fall of the Galactic Council, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the Great Assembly Hall of New Geneva, watching delegates from over 300 species take their seats for the morning session of the Galactic Democratic Assembly. The building itself was a testament to the new galaxy, designed not by one species, but by a collaborative team that included human architects, builder engineers who had emerged from hiding, singer artists, and representatives from dozens of other civilizations. It was beautiful in a way that no single species could have imagined. "Nervous?" Admiral Webb asked, joining her at the observation deck. "Terrified," Chen admitted with a smile. "It's one thing to tear down tyranny. It's another to build something better. Below them, the morning's agenda was ambitious, establishing trade routes to newly discovered species, coordinating disaster relief for 3 systems hit by stellar storms, and debating the ethics of terraforming uninhabited worlds. The kinds of problems that civilizations should be solving together. First item on the agenda, announced Speaker Yex, the former council ambassador who now served as the Assembly's elected leader, is the final. Report on the Reconciliation Commission. Keeper Vash, now serving as the commission's head, approached the podium. His silver scales caught the morning light streaming through the massive windows as he began to speak. Fellow beings, after 5 years of investigation, we have confirmed the existence of 37 species eliminated by the former council. We have also located survivors of 12 species previously thought extinct. The hall buzzed with quiet excitement. Finding the hidden survivors had become one of the new galaxy's most important missions. More significantly, Vash continued, we have recovered cultural archives, genetic samples, and in some cases, entire preserved colonies of lost civilizations. The galaxy is not just rebuilding, it is healing. Chen felt tears in her eyes as the screens showed images of builder children taking their first steps in newly constructed cities. Wanderer merchants reopening trade routes their species had maintained for millennia, and singer choirs performing for audiences who had never heard their music before. However, Vash's tone grew serious. We must address the question of justice for those who ordered these atrocities. This was the part Chen had been dreading. In the aftermath of the revolution, there had been calls for trials, for punishment, for revenge against the former council leaders. The galaxy had wrestled with a fundamental question. How do you seek justice without becoming the thing you fought against? The Reconciliation Commission recommends, Vash announced, that all former council leaders be granted amnesty in exchange for full cooperation in restoration efforts. The hall erupted in debate. Some delegates shouted approval, others voiced outrage. Chen watched the chaos and felt a familiar weight on her shoulders. Why? Called out a young reptilian delegate, one of Zextar's own species. They committed genocide. They deserve punishment. Vash waited for quiet before responding. Because, young friend, punishment will not bring back the dead. But their knowledge can help us find the lost. Their connections can speed healing. Their repentance can ensure this never happens again. From the former council section, where pardoned leaders sat as observers, Zextar stood slowly. May I speak? He asked quietly. Speaker Yex nodded and Zextar approached the podium. He looked older now, his golden scales dulled by years of guilt and regret. My species has a saying, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. The hunter who becomes the hunted learns the value of mercy. I spent 60 years believing that the council's way was the only way to maintain order. I voted for the extinction of 18 species without losing a single night's sleep. He paused, looking out at the diverse faces watching him. Then I tried to vote for the extinction of humanity. And humanity taught me something I had never learned in 6 decades of life. That strength comes not from eliminating those who are different, but from celebrating them. He gestured to the mixed groups of beings throughout the hall. Look around you, humans working with singers to compose new forms of art. Builders collaborating with my own people to design impossible structures. Species that the council declared incompatible, sharing knowledge and friendship. His voice grew stronger. I cannot undo my crimes. I cannot bring back the civilizations I helped destroy. But I can spend whatever years remain to me working to build a galaxy where no species ever faces extinction for the crime of being different. When he finished, the hall was silent. Then slowly one being began to clap, then another. Within moments, the entire assembly was applauding, not for the man who had ordered genocide, but for the possibility of redemption. As the session continued, Chen found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. The desperate fight for survival had become something bigger, a fundamental change in how the galaxy viewed itself. The humans have a proposal, announced Admiral Webb. Rising from the Earth delegation section, he carried a small device that projected a holographic display for all to see. We call it the Sanctuary Protocol, he explained. A guarantee that any species, anywhere in the galaxy, can call for protection if they face extinction, whether from natural disaster, war, or government action. The display showed a network of emergency beacons scattered throughout galactic space, each one capable of summiting a distress call that would reach every member world within hours. More than that, Webb continued, we propose that every species contributes ships and personnel to rapid response fleets. Not military conquest fleets like the old Council used, but rescue fleets, evacuation fleets, protection fleets. From the crystalline section, Ambassador Velana stood. She had been one of the most vocal supporters of Resolution 4471. But 5 years of working alongside humans had changed her perspective. The Crystalline Confederation supports this proposal, she announced. We offer our fastest ships and our most advanced shielding technology. Queen Hive Mother Zack's compound eyes glittered as she rose from the insectoid section. The swarm pledges our logistics networks. No species should face extinction alone while we have the means to help. One by one, delegates stood to offer support. The ethereals provided their long-range sensors. The builders offered construction expertise for emergency shelters. Even former Council loyalists contributed resources to the growing protection network. But the most moving moment came when a small delegation from the far rim of the galaxy approached the podium. They were the Whisper Folk, a species so quiet and unassuming that the old Council had barely acknowledged their existence. We have little to offer, their representative said in a voice so soft the translation systems had to amplify it. No mighty fleets, no advanced technology. But we have something that might matter. The hall leaned forward to listen. We have been watching. For 1,000 years, we have kept records of every species in our sector. We know who lives where, what they need to survive, how to contact them. We offer this knowledge freely so that no one can simply disappear without the galaxy noticing. The implication hit everyone at once. The Whisper Folk had been maintaining the kind of database that could have prevented the Council's genocides, if anyone had bothered to ask. As the session continued, Chen felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine hope for the future. The galaxy wasn't just rebuilding, it was becoming something better than it had ever been before. But the day's most significant moment came during the afternoon session, when Speaker Yex announced a special presentation. We have received a message from the deep void, he said solemnly. A transmission from coordinates beyond our star maps. The main screen activated, showing static that slowly resolved into an image that made the entire hall gasp. It was a human face, but not one they recognized. The woman appearing on screen was older, with gray hair and eyes that held the weight of incredible distance. Greetings to the new Galactic Assembly, she said, her voice carrying across space and time. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the deep space vessel Pioneer. We launched from Earth 75 years ago on a mission to explore beyond the galactic rim. Murmurs rippled through the hall. 75 years ago, humanity had barely achieved interplanetary travel. The idea that they had sent ships to intergalactic space seemed impossible. We've been monitoring your transmissions, Vasquez continued. The revolution, the trials, the new government, all of it. And we have news that might interest you. The image shifted to show something that took everyone's breath away. It was a star map, but not of their galaxy. This showed another galaxy entirely, and scattered throughout it were markers indicating inhabited worlds. We found them, Vasquez said simply. We found the lost species. The hall erupted. On the screen, the markers began displaying names. Wanderer colonies that had escaped the Council's purge, builder outposts in distant space, singer enclaves that had fled beyond the galaxy's edge. The old Council was very thorough in hunting down refugees within our galaxy, Vasquez explained. But they never thought to look beyond it. Thousands of survivors made it to neighboring galaxies where they've been waiting for word that it was safe to return. Admiral Webb was on his feet, his voice cracking with emotion. How many? Millions, Vasquez replied. Entire cultures preserved in exile. And Captain, they're not the only ones out here. We've made contact with dozens of species that never joined the original galactic community. They've been watching your revolution with great interest. The implications were staggering. The galaxy they knew was just the beginning. Beyond their borders waited civilizations they had never imagined, survivors they had thought lost forever, and possibilities that stretched into infinity. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, chattering excitedly about the revelations, Chen found herself standing alone in the great hall. "Overwhelming?" Keeper Vash asked, joining her at the podium. "In the best possible way," she replied. 5 years ago we were fighting just to survive. Now humanity has given the galaxy something it never had before." Vash finished. "Hope for redemption, proof that even the worst mistakes can be corrected if enough people care to try." Through the massive windows, they could see the city of New Geneva bustling with activity. Humans and aliens worked side by side, building monuments to lost species, planning rescue missions to distant worlds, and creating art that no single civilization could have imagined. In the harbor, ships from hundreds of worlds prepared to depart on missions of exploration, rescue, and reunification. The galaxy was spreading its wings, reaching out to embrace possibilities that had been denied for millennia. "The Council wanted a galaxy without humanity," Chen mused. "Instead," Vash replied with his musical laugh, "they got a galaxy where humanity ensures everyone gets a second chance." Above them, the stars beckoned with infinite promise. The old galaxy had been ruled by fear, maintained through the threat of extinction. The new galaxy was being built on something far more powerful, the human belief that everyone, no matter how different, deserved a place among the stars. As night fell over New Geneva, beings of every conceivable form walked the streets together, their children playing games that mixed the rules of a dozen different species, their artists collaborating on works that transcended any single culture's imagination. The Council had tried to eliminate humanity because they feared what made humans different. Their stubbornness, their refusal to accept the unacceptable, their dangerous belief that things could always be better. They had been right to fear those qualities. They had simply been wrong about what that fear meant. Humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their military might. It had been their absolute refusal to accept that anyone, human or alien, deserved to face extinction alone. The galaxy had tried to eliminate humanity. Instead, humanity had saved the galaxy from itself, and in the vast spaces between the stars, more voices were calling out, ready to join the growing chorus of civilizations united not by fear, but by hope. The Council's galaxy was dead. Humanity's galaxy was just beginning. The end. This story demonstrates that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the refusal to let others be destroyed. The galaxy learned that diversity isn't a threat to be eliminated, it's a strength to be celebrated. And sometimes, it takes the dangerous ones to teach everyone else what civilization really means.